On the bus, I received a text message. If the number of people on your bus does not match the number in your phone's video recording, get off immediately. Skeptical, I raised my phone. In the camera's view, the empty bus was packed with people.
What the hell? Some new kind of text message virus? My skin crawled as I stared at the extra figures on my phone screen. It had to be another prank from some joker in my class. But the strange thing was, the sender's field was blank. There wasn't even a number. I opened the camera app again. On the screen, the dense crowd of figures, sitting and standing, all lifted their heads at the same time, looking straight at me. A bizarre excitement seemed to dance in their dozens of pairs of eyes. Smack. I slammed my phone face down on my lap, my scalp tingling. In my mind, I had already cursed the prankster to high heaven. Didn't they know I was on the last bus of the night? That was seriously terrifying. If I ever found out who sent it, I would beat them to a pulp. The more I thought about it, the angrier I got. I opened my chat app and fired off several messages with angry emojis to my class group chat. But each message came back with a red exclamation mark. That's when I noticed the signal icon on my phone was a small red X. There was no signal at all. A strange chill shot up my spine. I'd been doing a summer internship in Naperville recently, and I took this 2:35 cross-city bus home to Chicago every Friday. I'd never lost signal before. I don't know if it was just my imagination, but the lights inside the bus seemed to have grown paler, casting a sinister gloom. All sorts of ghost stories, haunted buses, the final ride of the dead, bubbled up from my memory. It got to the point where everyone else on the bus started to look unnatural. I was terrified that at any second, their faces would start glowing green and they'd rush at me. The more I thought, the more uneasy I became. Get off the bus. I had to get off the bus. I'd just take a cab home. With that in mind, I quickly looked at the route map. We had just passed the Rainwood Industrial Park station. The next stop, Bridgeview Station, was just a few minutes away. I moved to stand by the rear door. A high school girl was sitting nearby, diligently studying vocabulary. On the other side, a trendy-looking guy sat in the priority seating, muttering complaints about the crappy network. What ghosts? They were all living, breathing people. I couldn't help but feel ridiculous for my earlier paranoia. Just then, the bus arrived at the stop, and the rear door hissed open. A foul, cold gust of wind blew my hair into my face. I turned my head, and a face with rotting flesh and a grotesque smile slammed into my vision. It was a woman in a red dress, waving at me enthusiastically from outside the bus. "Come on down. Get off the bus." Under the bus's interior lights, I could clearly see writhing magnets burrowing in and out of her cheeks. "Ah!" I screamed in terror and stumbled backward, tripping over the steps behind me. I fell in a heap by the door and my wireless earbuds clattered out of the bus. The woman took another step forward, her body nearly leaning into the vehicle. A pair of eyes oozing a yellow fluid stared intently at me. Her maggot-infested mouth opened and closed. "Come on down! Get off the bus!" Goosebumps erupted all over my body. I scrambled on all fours, desperately crawling deeper into the bus. "A ghost! There's a ghost outside!" I shrieked, my face a mask of terror. Clang! The bus door slammed shut again, and the horrifying woman's figure vanished into the dark night. A muscular man who had been sitting in a blind spot at the back and couldn't see the rear door spoke up, annoyed. "What's your problem being so jumpy? You're going to give someone with a heart condition a heart attack." The bus was silent. No one answered him. The high school girl closest to the door was frozen in fear, huddled in her seat. The muscular man looked around, confused, and saw that most of the passengers had looks of absolute terror on their faces, still reeling from the shock. From the back row, a beer-bellied man in a polo shirt crossed his arms and let out a disdainful snort. He looked at me with a cold smirk, as if he had it all figured out. My mind was a blank, and a chill washed over me. There really were ghosts. There were ghosts outside, and there were ghosts inside. What was I supposed to do? As I was thinking, a hand suddenly rested on my shoulder. I tensed up, about to leap away, but it was just the trendy guy from the priority seat. He was clearly terrified too, holding out a crumbled piece of paper with a trembling hand. He swallowed hard and said, "Miss, look at this. I just found it in the crack of my seat." I looked down. Scrawled on the paper in a messy, twisted script were a few words. "Do not get off the bus. Whatever you do, do not get off."
The hair on my arms stood on end. Who left this note? Were they still on the bus? And who sent that text message? Why did the text tell me to get off while this note said not to? I looked around at the other passengers. Including me, there were 7 of us. We were all stuck on this bus together. There was no point in hiding anything. I spoke loudly. "Everyone, this bus is haunted. If you use your phone's camera, you'll see the truth of what's on this bus." The already fearful passengers froze, their expressions a mixture of doubt and terror. The beer-bellied man let out an impatient sound, his voice broking the oppressive atmosphere. "I have to say, you guys really go all out for your prank videos. Professional equipment, actors, costumes, and makeup. How much do you make for one video?" It's real. There are ghosts," the trendy guy stammered, tossing his phone aside, his voice cracking. An older woman at the front of the bus clasped her hands together in prayer. "Oh, heavens! Good Lord, there are really ghosts! Don't come for me! Please don't come for me!" The muscular man was sweating, his voice trembling. "Buddy, maybe you should check with your phone first." "What's there to see? Technology is so advanced these days, who knows what tricks they're using?" The beer-bellied man waved a dismissive hand, his chin held high. "I've been watching her, sneaking around, filming with her phone. She was sitting just fine, then she runs to the back door to put on a show with her accomplice about ghosts. And what's worse, look around. They've blocked all our phone signals. They have no shame when it comes to making their videos." His words made the other passengers, who had been scared, start to doubt. Their eyes turned on me with suspicion. The older woman at the front of the bus looked me up and down. "Young lady, you're not really pranking us, are you?" The muscular man looked from the trendy guy to me, a look of dawning realization on his face. "You two are in this together, aren't you? This kind of behavior is just outrageous. People like you are what's wrong with society." I opened my mouth, but for a moment, I didn't know how to explain, how to make them believe it was all real. Just then, the bus arrived at another stop. This was the Tech College station. The station lights were dim yellow. The woman in the polka-dotted red dress was still there, but this time she had a dozen other figures with rotting skin standing behind her. They stood in a neat line, all wearing the same grotesque, smiling expression. In the dark night, they chanted in unison, "Come on down, get off the bus. Come on down, get off the bus." The eerie, horrifying scene silenced the bus instantly. People stared blankly at the door, fear beginning to creep back in. "Ha! They really spent a fortune on this. Look at all those actors." The beer-bellied man remained unfazed. In fact, he looked triumphant and excited as he rolled up his sleeves. "Everyone, watch this. Don't let this woman get away. I'm going to grab a couple of the ringleaders and then we'll all take them to the police station." "This is a paranormal domain. You can't get off the bus," a voice shouted. I didn't have time to see who it was. I instinctively tried to grab the beer-bellied man, but he cursed and pushed me away. The moment one of his legs crossed the threshold of the door, a hand, pale green and white, shot out from under the bus and grabbed him. With a violent tug, the man was slammed to the ground at the bus entrance. The station lights went out. By the light from inside the bus, we could clearly see that the leg that had been grabbed was gone. Blood gushed from the stump. From the pitch-black night outside came the distinct, horrifying sound of chewing. The excitement on the beer-bellied man's face vanished, replaced by sheer terror. He stared with wide eyes, struggling, clawing at the bus door to pull himself back in, but something in the darkness yanked him away. We heard a single, blood-curdling scream, and then he was silent. It all happened in a flash. Most people on the bus hadn't even processed it yet. The lights inside the bus went out too. When they flickered back on, everyone's breath caught for a second. My pupils dilated, my eyes feeling as if they were about to leap from their sockets. Pressed against every window was a rotting human face. Their features were distorted from being squashed against the glass,
Yet they were all smiling that same grotesque smile, their eyes filled with greedy desire as they stared at the people inside. They all opened their mouths at once. "Come on down, get off the bus. Come on down, get off the bus." After a brief, dead silence, the bus finally erupted in a chorus of terrified, crazed screams. The bus was in chaos, people screaming hysterically. The bus started moving again. For some reason, the ghosts pressed against the windows didn't follow. The older woman was curled up on the floor next to me, crying like a child. "Dad, Mom, please protect me. You have to come protect me," she sobbed. The trendy guy was also praying to every god and deity he could think of, as well as his own esteemed ancestors in the spirit world. I opened my mouth, but I couldn't think of anyone to pray to. My parents died in an accident when I was 6. Even if they heard my pleas, they would never protect me, the jinx who kept them from having a son. I gathered my courage and looked up. I suddenly noticed a piece of paper on the window. It looked like it had been torn from a notebook, wet, and stuck to the outside of the glass. On it was a childlike drawing of a family of 4, 2 adults holding the hands of a boy and a girl. Beside the drawing, in a child's handwriting, were the words, "Mommy and Daddy love my little brother, and me too." It was a perfectly normal sentence, yet I felt that the last 3 words, "and me too," were written with extra care and neatness, almost as if they were an afterthought, tacked on to the end. I blinked, and when I looked again, the paper was gone. Maybe my eyes were playing tricks on me, or maybe the wind had blown it away. Click, clack. A woman in a yellow dress, who had been sitting in the back, stood up and walked to the middle of the aisle. She was in her mid-20s and holding a mystery magazine. "Everyone," she said coolly, "do you plan on screaming like this forever?" The chaos continued. She spoke again, her voice calm. "Don't you want to know the rules for getting off?" Her words snapped people out of their extreme panic. The older woman asked urgently, "Miss, you know how to get off, don't you? Tell me, quickly." The trendy guy grabbed the woman's arm, excited. "I knew it! You must be a master of the mystic arts, a hidden expert, right?" The woman in yellow pulled her arm away. "I am not a master of the mystic arts. I don't know anything about that, but we can get out of this using logic." A master of logic. My gaze unconsciously fell on the magazine in her hand. On its dark, moody cover were the words, "Be careful. The world is mutating, combining with the fractured human psyche to form terrifying paranormal domains. Survival rate less than 1 in 1,000. She was the one who shouted at the beer-bellied man, "This is a paranormal domain. You can't get off the bus." Was she connecting the two? But using the premise of a mystery magazine to analyze a haunting? Wasn't that a bit unreliable? I frowned. "So what's your logical method for getting off?" She smiled faintly, a look of ease on her face. "It's simple. Get off at your stop." The muscular man immediately became angry. "Get off at our stop? Do you take us for idiots? That guy just now was gone the second he stepped off." The woman in yellow was unruffled. She said calmly, "Yes, get off at your stop, but it's not time yet." "When will it be time?" "When you reach the stop." "Which stop?" "The one you told the driver." "My stop," I told the driver. The answer was surprisingly simple. "Why?" I asked, skeptical. The other passengers were also listening, half believing, wanting to see what she would say. She explained the concept of the paranormal domain to everyone, emphasizing that it wasn't a premise from a mystery novel, but a theory being researched by some in the scientific community. She continued, "The key to escaping a paranormal domain is to find its rules, and these rules are formed by the obsession of a fractured human mind, the mental host, before their death." Here she paused, her voice taking on an eerie tone. "Haven't you noticed? From the very beginning, the driver hasn't reacted to anything that has happened on this bus." Her words hung in the air. The people on the steadily moving bus collectively drew a sharp breath, looking toward the driver in terror. So much had happened, so chaotically, that no one had had the mental energy to notice that the most unnatural person on the bus was the driver.
Under normal circumstances, how could an entire bus of people be screaming while the driver continued to drive calmly without saying a word? The older woman at the front of the bus, her face filled with terror, scrambled to the middle of the aisle as if fleeing a monster. The trendy guy asked, his voice trembling, So the driver is the mental host? Correct. The woman in yellow gave a subtle smile. Do you remember what the driver said to you when you got on? People delved into their memories. My memory has always been exceptionally good. I clearly remembered the driver asking me which stop I was going to. I told him my stop, he entered the fare, and then he said, I will make sure you get there. The high school girl quickly raised her hand and answered. The trendy guy also had a flash of recognition, confirming the driver had said the same thing. The older woman and the muscular man couldn't remember. My pupils dilated. A sense of horror washed over me. Both of them had gotten on after me, as had the beer-bellied man. I realized the driver had said the exact same thing to every single person. The same words, the same intonation. I looked at the woman in yellow. You think that's his obsession? Her eyes shined with the thrill of deduction. Exactly. I deduced that this bus was in some kind of accident and everyone on board died. The ghostly figures we see through the camera are the deceased passengers. This caused the driver to have a mental breakdown. His obsession is to get the passengers who haven't gotten off yet to their intended stops. The trendy guy's eyes lit up. Master, he asked excitedly, does that mean as long as we get off at our stop, not before and not after, we'll be safe? The woman smiled confidently. Yes, that's the rule. The bus slowed down, pulling people's thoughts back to the present. Ding dong! Now arriving at Rainwood Industrial Park Station. Passengers for this stop, please prepare to disembark. As the electronic announcement sounded, the trendy guy's excited expression froze on his face. His stylish hair was plastered to his forehead with cold sweat, his eyes filled with fear. Rainwood Industrial Park Station? Haven't we already passed that? The air inside the bus seemed to congeal. Everyone knew perfectly well that this stop should have been White Creek Station. The bus was going in circles. A thick fog had rolled in at some point. The figures outside, with their grotesque smiles, stood in the hazy mist. It was as if they were standing at the gates of hell, waiting to drag someone down, to take their place. But you said we would get to our stops. The high school girl's voice was on the verge of tears. The older woman kept her head down, not daring to look outside. What's the damn use of logic? She trembled. We've run into something haunted. We need a real master who can draw talismans and kill ghosts. No, something's not right, I frowned, quickly replaying the two disembarking incidents in my mind. I suddenly realized, it's the time. The time is wrong. I had taken this bus more than once, and because of my unusually sharp memory, I could remember the arrival time for each stop. I clearly remembered that it normally took about 15 minutes to get from the previous stop to Rainwood Industrial Park Station, but just now, it had only taken 8 minutes. I was about to share this when the woman in yellow said loudly, "The time is wrong. The station announcement is fake." She held up her phone, displaying a photo taken with the zoom lens. Through the dense fog, you could just make out the station sign, White Creek Station. I took out my own phone, about to take a picture to verify it myself, but the bus lurched and started moving again. I frowned. The stop seemed shorter this time. The passengers' taut nerves relaxed slightly. As long as it was fake, as long as the bus was still moving, it was okay. The woman in yellow continued her deduction. I suspect it's the driver's subconscious at play. The bus crashed. His obsession is to get the remaining passengers to their stops, but as he was dying, his subconscious refused to believe he could make it back. So it's repeating some of the station announcements. We just have to wait patiently. When the bus reaches our actual stop, we can get off safely. Any other unnecessary actions could be dangerous. Her words provided a sense of security. People returned to their seats. The trendy guy quickly praised her. "Master, you're a real badass. I'll do whatever you say." But a sense of unease still lingered in my mind. Everyone on this late-night cross-city bus was heading from Gary back to Chicago. All our stops were towards the end of the line. Could we really be safe just waiting this long without doing anything? My phone still had no signal. The chat window with my grandma was stuck on the last voice message she sent after I told her I'd be home late. No rush, sweetie. Grandma will wait for you. I couldn't help but think of when I was stuck out of town during the pandemic lockdown. At first, there were too many people and not enough supplies. I had to ration my food every day. On a video call, my feisty little grandma had smiled and told me, "No rush, sweetie. Grandma will wait for you." The next thing I knew, that stubborn old lady had joined the volunteer team, wearing a red armband and carrying a megaphone shouting instructions around the neighborhood with vigor. She had glared and said, "If I don't help get the world back in order, what if you get locked down again the next time you go out?" There was someone waiting for me. No matter what, I had to get off this bus alive. I took a deep breath and proactively took out my phone to observe the ghostly figures inside, hoping to find more information. Everyone else had already done this, so it wouldn't count as an unnecessary action. The camera showed a lot of people, but not many were sleeping or carrying breakfast, so it probably was evening rush hour. There were laptop bags on the floor, some trash, and an old pink school bag. Under one seat was a chipped red hair clip. No clues. I didn't give up. My gaze fell on the driver. He was the mental host. Wouldn't he know more? With that thought, I started walking towards the front of the bus, hoping to get a word with him. As I neared the front, my phone vibrated. A text message had arrived. But there was still no signal and the sender was still blank. I suddenly froze. The last time I had also received a text shortly after passing Rainwood Industrial Park Station. Was the bus really not in a loop? I looked out the window. The dark night and thick fog completely obscured the view. I couldn't see anything. With a sense of dread, I opened the message. It read, "Get off the bus now. Don't believe what anyone on the bus is telling you. There are only 2 living people on this bus." The words exploded in my mind like a thunderclap. An icy chill shot from the soles of my feet to the top of my head. I looked up. The woman in yellow was standing in front of me, her eyes fixed eerily on my phone screen. The blood in my veins seemed to freeze. A massive wave of fear surged from the depths of my heart. I instinctively took a step back. But just then, the older woman sitting in front of the trendy guy shot past me, rushing towards the driver and crazily grabbing at the steering wheel. A second later, she was lifted by an invisible force, and her head was slammed against the metal box behind the driver. With a sickening crack, her neck broke. Her head, bloody, lolled back, hanging limply from her shoulders, held on only by skin and flesh. No one had time to react. The high school girl, overwhelmed with terror, lost her mind and grabbed the emergency hammer to smash a window. Before the hammer could connect with the glass, her fingers twisted into a pretzel shape. She was lifted as if by a noose around her neck, her body hanging by the window, her legs kicking a few times in the air before she went still. Thud! The 2 bodies were thrown onto the aisle at the front of the bus by the unknown force. A silent warning. It was too fast. 2 people dead in just a few seconds. I was frozen in place, not even having time to feel fear. The woman in yellow had tried to stop them, but it was too late. She walked over with a grave expression and picked up a phone from between the bodies. It was the older woman's. The screen was still lit. On it was a text message. "The real way to leave is to make the driver stop the bus." Clearly, the older woman had believed the text and tried to make the driver stop, only to be killed by the unknown force on the bus. The bus was deathly quiet. Even screams were suppressed in people's throats. Everyone was afraid that if they made a sound, the unknown force would kill them next. After a moment, the woman in yellow's gaze swept over me, her voice cold. "There's no signal in a paranormal domain. Believing any information from an unknown source will likely get you and others killed. Everyone find a seat and sit down. Do not do anything that is not normal bus riding behavior." Her rational, calm words made the nearly hysterical trendy guy and muscular man unconsciously comply. They huddled together in the last row like quails, their eyes darting around in fear. My eyes were glued to the older woman's phone screen. My head felt like it had been hit with a sledgehammer. A text message. The older woman had received one too. What if I had been the first one to believe the text? The woman in yellow walked over to me, her tone heavy. The power of the domain will lure people into breaking the rules and dying here. I thought you were in danger just now and wanted to stop you, but then they died first. She looked tired. Trust me, she said earnestly. You'll be able to get off safely in a few more stops. Don't do anything else dangerous. Let's all sit in the back together. We can watch out for each other. I nodded, still shaken. The gruesome corpse of the older woman lay right there. For the moment, I had lost the courage to approach the driver. The bus passed Bridgeview Station again, stopping briefly before moving on. According to the real route, I had 5 more stops until my destination. The safe stop was getting closer. But the words from the text message echoed in my mind like a curse. Get off the bus now. Don't believe what anyone on the bus is telling you. There are only 2 living people on this bus. If the text was true, then around me, at least 2 more people were ghosts. My gaze drifted to the woman in yellow. Was she one of them? In an instant, the air in the bus felt even colder. I was on pins and needles. Ding dong. Now arriving at Tech College Station. Passengers for this stop, please prepare to disembark. Swoosh. To everyone's disbelief, I stood up and walked to the steps of the rear door. The trendy guy, hunched over and afraid to look outside, hissed, "Hey, you'll die if you get off. Are you trying to kill yourself?" The muscular man gritted his teeth. "Don't bother with her. You can't reason with a dead woman walking." The woman in yellow looked at me with a headache, as if watching a cliché horror movie character determined to die. The fog outside was even thicker, completely swallowing the station. Only a dim yellow glow was visible. The dozen or so rotting figures stood like a welcome committee outside the door, enthusiastically calling for the people on the bus to get off. At the very front was the woman in the red polka dot dress holding the hand of a tall, thin man. Next to them was a 5 or 6-year-old boy. They looked like a family. I took a deep breath and walked down the steps, just an inch away from stepping outside. The crowd outside stirred, their eyes fixed on me with excitement, as if they wanted to pounce. But they couldn't come in. That had been proven at the previous stops. The wind blowing in was cold, carrying a thick, foul stench. I opened my eyes wide and carefully observed them. I desperately wanted to know, were the ghosts outside real? If the text message was true, then the first person who died might not have been a person at all. And at that time, the lights on the bus had all gone out. No one actually saw if the beer-bellied man was eaten by the ghosts outside. So would you really be eaten if you got off? Thoughts of getting off the bus danced in my head like the devil's whisper. As the trendy guy and the others stared at me like I was insane, I slowly raised my hand. Zzz. The lights on the bus and at the station went out simultaneously. In the darkness, I heard a clear sound from the fare machine at the front of the bus. Beep! Student card. $3. In the complete darkness, that sound was more terrifying than the crowd of ghosts outside. Did someone get on the bus? I slowly crouched down, pressing myself against the wall of the bus, afraid that something would emerge from the darkness. Tap, tap, tap. Footsteps came from the front of the bus, getting closer and finally stopping right next to me. I could clearly feel something brushing against my clothes. My body went rigid, the hair on my back standing on end. As my mind raced for a way to defend myself, I heard a timid, childlike voice in my ear. "Miss, are you okay? Do you need help?" My vision blurred and the lights came back on. A thin, dark-skinned little girl of about 10 was bending over, looking at me nervously. Her hair was a bit yellow, and she wore a chipped, butterfly-shaped hair clip. From the back of the bus came the sound of chattering teeth. It was the trendy guy. "Miss." The little girl nervously fiddled with her blue school uniform, which was stained with large patches of ink and looked dirty. I'm fine, sweetie. You should go sit down. The bus is about to move." I forced a stiff smile, but my eyes couldn't help but dart to the chipped hair clip in her hair. I had seen that exact hair clip in the ghostly world on my phone. A tingling sensation spread from my scalp. This little girl was not human. The little girl timidly shifted her feet, turning her back to the rear of the bus. I tensed up, but then I saw her anxiously mouthing words at me. Get off the bus. Get off the bus. This ghost was telling me to get off the bus? The reversal was so sudden I couldn't process it. Just then, the woman in yellow's cool voice rang out. The closer we get to our stops, the stranger things will get. It's all just to lure you to your death. Everyone, act as if you see and hear nothing. No more unnecessary actions. Her expression was serious, her eyes fixed on the little girl. The little girl became even more anxious, mouthing the words to me one more time. But the bus door slammed shut. She gave me a slightly hurt look, then under the woman in yellow's icy gaze, she timidly walked to a priority seat and sat down, clutching her clothes, not daring to lift her head. I suddenly realized that from the moment the little girl got on the bus, the crowd of ghosts outside had gone silent. Before, they had been practically pressed against the bus. Now they had retreated about 2 meters away, silently watching the bus from within the white mist. The bus lurched and started moving. Only then did I look at the napkin I had folded into a strip in my hand. When I had raised my hand earlier, it wasn't to rashly stick it out the door, but to use the napkin as an experiment. The paper was intact and clean. There were no traces of any sticky residue on it. But I was certain that I had extended the napkin at least halfway out the door, a distance that would have definitely touched the face of the red-dressed woman who had been practically lunging into the bus. I brought the paper to my nose and sniffed. Not a hint of the foul stench. I stood there stunned. A feeling of horrifying yet thrilling realization dawned on me. The ghosts outside the bus were not real. The text message was true. Getting off the bus was the safe way out. I couldn't help but wonder, was the woman in yellow just a stubborn logician, or was she a ghost herself? And the little girl was clearly a ghost, so why was she telling me to get off? There were too many things I couldn't figure out. Whatever. I made up my mind. One more stop. I'll test it one more time. If I'm right, I'm getting off immediately. With my thoughts cleared, I didn't go back to my seat. I stood by the door, waiting for the next stop. Just then, I heard the trendy guy's choked, trembling voice. Has anyone else noticed? Their shoes are wet? His words brought my attention back to my own body. I wiggled my toes. A squishing sound came from my shoes. They really were wet. As if they had been soaked in water, completely drenched. I moved my foot, and a wet footprint appeared on the gray-black floor of the bus. The most terrifying part was that the wetness, like a living thing, was crawling up my legs. This bizarre turn of events made my heart sink. I could only hope my plan to get off at the next stop wouldn't go wrong. An oppressive silence fell over the bus. A few moments later, the trendy guy started crying out, slapping at the wet patch on his clothes. It's climbing up my calf. It's trying to drown me. It's trying to drown me. But no matter how hard he slapped, the wetness kept creeping upward. Ugh. The muscular man was sweating profusely, letting out a low growl as he pounded his thighs with his fists. Finally, he just buried his head in his knees, grabbing his hair. I couldn't tell if he was crying. Only the little girl remained seated, perfectly still. The woman in yellow spoke up, her voice a soothing balm. The closer a domain gets to a safe point, the more dangerous it becomes. Everyone, don't lose your heads. The next few stops head close together. The longest one is no more than 5 minutes. At the rate this wetness is rising, we won't have a problem. I looked at the wet patch on my own clothes, then at the others, confused. If this bus had fallen into water and an invisible current was flooding the vehicle, the wetness on me should be the highest, since I was standing by the door, the lowest point on the bus. But I saw that the level of wetness was the same on everyone. This was too strange. The bus slowed down. I stared nervously at the door. We were at Rainwood Industrial Park Station again.
My hand holding a napkin ready for another test froze in midair.
The crowd of ghosts outside was gone. There was only a thick, unnatural fog. Even up close, it was a blanket of white, enveloping the bus like a monstrous creature. I quickly changed my plan, crumpled the napkin in my hand into a ball, and tossed it out the door. The fog swirled, but I couldn't see anything. It felt like throwing a punch into thin air. I quickly took off my jacket, crouched down, and held one sleeve, letting the rest of it hang outside the door. I had never seen fog this thick. As soon as my gray sports jacket went out the door, it was swallowed by the mist. The whole time, my nerves were stretched taut. I was terrified that a hand would suddenly shoot out from under the bus. But I didn't feel anything strange from the sleeve in the fog. No pulling force. I carefully started to pull my jacket back in. I had only retrieved one sleeve when the door slammed shut, clamping down on the rest of the jacket. It was stuck fast. I stared at the small section of sleeve I had pulled back in. My pupils contracted. It was wet, as if it had just been pulled out of water. Water! Was the outside all water? The trendy guy started screaming again. It's getting faster! Ah! It's past my knees! It's on my thighs! He cried out in terror and helplessness, slapping at himself as if on fire. The woman in yellow glanced at me, then turned to the trendy guy, her tone strange. That woman's reckless actions have accelerated the wetness. If you don't take her phone away, who knows what other nonsense she'll believe? She's going to get us all killed. I had a bad feeling. Sure enough, the trendy guy whipped his head around to look at me, his previously dazed expression instantly turning ferocious. This is all your fault. You're a menace. He lunged at me like a madman. I cursed inwardly. Standing by the back door, I had nowhere to dodge. Just then, my phone, in my pants pocket, vibrated. The text message had come again. Just like the last two times, it arrived shortly after leaving Waynewood Industrial Park Station. I had no time for anything else. I quickly pulled out my phone and unlocked it. For the first time in my life, I hated myself for setting a screen lock, and even more for not using my fingerprint to unlock it. The trendy guy was already on me. Seeing I was still holding my phone, his eyes went blood red, and he grabbed for it. Damn it! If you want to die, fine, but don't drag us down with you. I twisted my body, freeing one hand to block him, but my eyes were fixed on the screen, my fingers rapidly typing my password. The trendy guy slammed into me, pinning me against the wall of the bus. I gripped my phone tightly, and relying on my strong memory, I typed in the final digits of my password, blindly tapping where the messages icon should be. He held me down with one hand and tried to snatch the phone with the other. The difference in strength between a man and a woman is no joke. Even though I was holding on as tight as I could, he, in his frenzy, pried my fingers open and ripped the phone from my grasp. His fingers obscured the screen. I only had time to glimpse a part of the message. Off the bus. To live. Notebook. Find. Core. Rules. This is the last chance. After snatching my phone, the trendy guy, afraid I would try to get it back, immediately threw it on the ground and stomped on it ferociously until it was shattered. The fragmented message made my heart feel like it was being squeezed by a hand. The last chance? Was I going to die at the next stop? What did off the bus mean? Was it get off quickly or don't get off? And what was the notebook? The clues were a mess. If it weren't for this idiot being provoked, I would have had the full message. Anger flared up inside me. I gritted my teeth, wanting to rush over and kick him a few times. But then I turned my head and saw the timid little girl. I paused. A flash of insight striking me, a clear line of thought formed in my mind. I walked towards the trendy guy, saying, "You're making such a scene. Aren't you afraid of being killed by the rules? Have you forgotten how the older woman and the others died?" The trendy guy had been running on pure anger. After smashing my phone, his rage had subsided. My words brought his fear flooding back. His legs gave out, and he collapsed to the floor, looking around in terror. "Don't kill me. I didn't break any rules. Don't kill me." I took the opportunity to quickly grab his phone. I didn't know the password, but that didn't matter. The camera could be used from the lock screen. I opened the camera and slowly scanned the bus. As the camera moved, my furrowed brow gradually relaxed. Soon, I put the phone away. Under everyone's gaze, I strode towards the front of the bus, straight for the driver's seat. "Don't go! You'll trigger something dangerous," the woman in yellow screamed. "You're fucking looking to die. You want me to beat you to death?" the muscular guy yelled, clenching his fist and rushing towards me. I didn't slow down at all. I stepped into the space between the two corpses, took a large leap, and landed in the driver area. The driver was a man in his 40s with a square face, wearing a light blue work shirt. On the floor by his seat was a large brown thermos. And stuffed under the seat was a person, folded into a block. He was wearing a polo shirt. His head was bent back onto his shoulders, and his eyes swallowed to stare at me. The scene was grotesque and horrifying, but it answered the questions in my mind. I turned my head and said to the woman in yellow and the muscular guy, who had now reached the front of the bus, "So none of you can get off this bus either."
The woman in yellow looked at the beer-bellied man under the driver's seat in shock. How can this be?" she stammered. The muscular man also had a look of terror on his face. I said, my expression blank, "There are only 2 living people on this bus. You can stop acting now." The woman in yellow said, with the tone of a weary resignation, "How many times do I have to tell you for you to believe me? The text messages are fake. If you believe them, you've fallen into a trap. Everything that has suddenly appeared on this bus is meant to lure you to your death. The only real way to get off is to disembark at the stop. You told the driver." "I've also figured out a few of the real rules," I said softly. "Why don't I share them with you?" First, I took a step forward. The woman in yellow and the muscular man, who were blocking my path, quickly moved aside. I continued forward, stepping over the 2 corpses in the aisle without hesitation. The bodies slid to the side on their own, clearing a path for me. I turned back and said to them both, word by word, "First, the dead cannot touch the living, so you can't directly stop a living person from getting off the bus. You can only use death to intimidate the living into following certain rules. Like the death of the beer-bellied man, which was meant to make the living afraid to get off the bus. Like the death of the older woman, which was to intimidate the living from approaching the driver's cabin, for fear they would find out that the people who died on this bus can never get off." The woman in yellow didn't speak. The muscular man also dropped his fearful act. They both stared at me with blank, eerie expressions. I slowly walked to the rear door. "Your goal from the very beginning has been to keep people from getting off the bus, because rule number 2 is getting off the bus is the true way to live." Just then, the electronic announcement sounded. "Ding dong! Now arriving at Bridgeview Station. Passengers for this stop, please prepare to disembark." A cool breeze blew in from outside. The station was shrouded in a thick fog. The crowd of ghosts was still nowhere to be seen. A grotesque smile appeared on the woman in yellow's face. "Then get off," she said gently. The muscular man mirrored her smile. "Then get off." Creak, creak. The older woman and the high school girl on the floor, along with the beer-bellied man from under the driver's seat, stiffly and unsteadily climbed to their feet. In twisted postures, they slowly advanced toward me, joining the other 2. They all wore the same grotesque smile, their mouths opening and closing as they chanted, "Then get off," the bus. The scene sent the trendy guy who was collapsed in the middle of the aisle from a state of daze to a state of sheer terror. His eyes were about to bulge out of their sockets. "Ghosts! They're all ghosts! All of them!" He scrambled backward, a mix of crawling and rolling to hide behind me, his body trembling uncontrollably. Of the 9 people on the bus, besides him and me, everyone else was a ghost. The sudden shock was so great that it was a miracle he hadn't fainted. Only the little girl, with her ever-timid expression, remained seated, as if nothing had happened. I calmly shook my head. Getting off is the true way to live. But this is the 3rd loop. A normal disembarking won't work anymore. I handed the still trembling trendy guy his phone with the camera on, gesturing him to look at the doorway. The camera's view now showed a large pile of a woman's jacket, a crumpled tissue, and was missing a chipped butterfly hair clip. My own wireless earbuds, which I had dropped at the very beginning, had never appeared in that world. There are two worlds on this bus. The world in which the people in the camera exist, and the world we are in. The two worlds began to merge when the wetness appeared. If we get off now, we will enter the world in the camera. That world has already been submerged. Once you enter it, you will die for good. Then what do we do? The trendy guy asked, grabbing my hand like a lifeline. To get off, I continued, we need to connect the two worlds to make the outside return to the real world. Like this. I suddenly grabbed the emergency hammer from the wall and slammed it against the window.
Crash! With a loud bang, the bright, clean world inside the bus shattered. The true interior of the bus was revealed, and river water poured in from all sides. The empty bus was now crowded with people screaming for help, pushing and shoving. Everyone was scrambling to swim out. Everything that had happened on the bus pointed to one rule. Everything the dead intimidated us not to do was exactly what we should do. The high school girl's death was to make the living afraid to use the emergency hammer to break the windows. So I deduced that the way out was to smash the windows with the hammer. Only after crossing the bridge would it be possible to fall into the water. To be safe, I had waited until the bus had passed the Bridgeview station before smashing the window. I don't know if it was because I had smashed the window too late, but by the time the world shattered, the water level inside the bus was already up to my chin. Seeing the window was still broken, I felt a small sense of relief. I took a deep breath, ready to swim out. Suddenly, I felt a force on my waist. I was pushed aside, nearly choking on water. When I resurfaced, I saw the trendy guy had already eagerly swum out of the broken window, his face filled with the joy of imminent escape. But he had only swum about 2 meters when he seemed to be grabbed by his limbs. His whole body convulsed in the water, spread-eagled. After 2 seconds, he stopped moving. He slowly turned around and, like the rotting figures, floated outside the bus, smiling grotesquely at the people still inside. He was dead. I looked out the window in despair, my certainty shattered. Why? The two worlds have merged. The outside has returned to the real world. But why is following the rules still a dead end? Why? No one answered me. The river water continued to pour into the bus. I shook my head, forcing myself to calm down, my mind racing. I must have missed something. There has to be something else. The bus was in chaos. The ghostly figures from the camera had become real people, all scrambling to get out. The woman in yellow and her group were now lifeless, floating in the water like wax figures. The water level was rising fast. I had to swim to the back seats, but even there, the water was at my nose. If I couldn't figure something out soon, I would drown in here. I was frantic. My eyes suddenly caught something floating in the churning water. That mystery magazine about the paranormal domains. My eyes lit up. I quickly grabbed it and opened it in the water. Stuck to the back of the magazine was a notebook. It was thin, and miraculously, it wasn't wet at all, despite being submerged. Relying on my eidetic memory, I read it at a glance. The elegant handwriting said, "My name is Serena Lynn. I am a squad leader from the World Anomaly Response Directorate. I am about to enter paranormal domain number 018, the Death Bus, to execute the containment mission for number 018. I must remember, on this bus, I am the only living person." The record stopped abruptly, as if she hadn't written a single word after getting on the bus. It seemed any trace of her after boarding would be erased, just like how the woman in yellow and her group, who had been dead for who knows how long, still appeared so lifelike. I thought of the fragmented third message, off the bus. To live, notebook, find, core, rules, this is the last chance. Was this the notebook from the text? The magazine part was completely soaked and couldn't be opened in the air. I quickly submerged the book in the water and flipped to the earlier sections. After a few tries, I found a useful passage. The key to escaping the paranormal domain is finding its rules. The rules in the core area of a paranormal domain are different from other areas. The rules are related to the obsession of the mental host. So that's it. In the third loop, I had already entered the core area of the domain. Connecting the information, I mentally completed the full text of the third message. Do not get off the bus. If you want to live, find the notebook, find the rules of the core area of the paranormal domain. This is the last chance. Now I was in the core area of the domain. The rules had changed, and the rules were all related to the mental host's obsession. Besides getting off the bus, what other obsession did the mental host have? My mind raced, trying to piece things together. My eyes glanced at the next two sentences. If, by misfortune, you are pulled into the mental host's psychic world, the rules will no longer be the way out. You need to find the hidden mental host and contain the paranormal domain. Some mental hosts still retain a part of their consciousness and fight against the unknown mutation. That was all the information there was. It seemed the research was not yet complete. There was no mention of how to contain a paranormal domain or what the method was. I temporarily pushed that thought aside. There was no time. The water was rising too fast. I already had to lie flat on my back to breathe. With one last breath of air, the next second, the bus was completely submerged. Find the mental host first. I held my breath and swam towards the driver's seat. After swimming about 2 meters, I saw the little girl who had gotten on midway. She was wearing a worn-out pink school bag, passed out in the water. I stopped. Was the driver really the mental host? Besides, the theory that the driver was the mental host was proposed by the woman in yellow. Nothing she said could be trusted. The oxygen in my lungs were running out. I had no time for verification. I quickly made a decision, scooped up the little girl, and swam towards the window. 1 second. 2 seconds. I was getting further and further away. I had bet correctly. I could almost imagine it. The bus loses control and plunges into the river. The adults on board scramble to smash the windows and escape. A small, frail figure is pushed aside by the chaotic crowd, helplessly falling down inside the bus, swallowed by the rapidly rising water. In the final moments of her life, she watches the escaping crowd. In that moment, she desperately wants to get off the bus. She desperately wants someone to see her, to save her. Saving her was her other obsession. A flicker of relief passed through me. I held the girl and swam upward with all my might. In the dark water, the world swirled with the current. My mind grew fuzzy. My lungs felt like they were about to explode. Just as I joyfully reached for the surface, a pair of small hands wrapped around my neck. No, I'm so close. My eyes widened in a desperate glare. I used every last ounce of my strength to paddle upward, but the two slender arms had become like iron clamps, heavy and unyielding. The surface was getting further and further away.
A massive clap of thunder boomed. I was back near that kindergarten. It was a stormy day, and a 5-year-old Clara was walking in the rain, holding an umbrella, her small body huddled. The rain was pouring down, the clouds so heavy and low that the sky was nearly black. The water on the road was already up to an adult's calf. Not far away was a kindergarten. The other children were either being held by their parents or carried on their backs. But she had no one to pick her up. She held an umbrella with a broken metal rib, a worn-out pink school bag on her back, and trudged down the street, one deep step after another. Thunder cracked one after another. Lightning seemed to cling to the edge of her umbrella. The small girl screamed and cried in fear, but could only huddle her body and press forward. I was like a ghost, unable to touch her or this world, only able to passively follow her, watching her tiny legs carry her down one long street after another, seemingly without end. Finally, after nearly an hour, she reached her front door, but she was soaked to the bone. She knocked for a long time, but no one answered. The neighbor, an auntie, saw her and compassionately handed her a towel to wipe her face. The door finally opened. A woman in a red polka dot dress came out, holding a 1-year-old boy, her face impatient. The neighbor couldn't help but advise, "There's a kindergarten right at your doorstep. Why make her go so far? It's so inconvenient." "Children need to be trained from a young age," the woman said, smiling as she looked at the little girl. "Clara loves going to school this way, right?"
The little girl's face was streaked with water, whether from rain or tears, I couldn't tell. Meeting her mother's gaze, she forced a fawning smile. "Yes, Mommy." After the door closed, the smile on her mother's face instantly vanished. "There's only one spot in the school district," she cursed with disdain. "If you take it, where will your poor little brother go, that nosy old hag?" Yes, the spot. Since she was 3, when her brother was still in her mother's womb, she had been told it belonged to her brother. The little girl, however, seemed to have already forgotten her crying and trembling in the storm. Like a little adult, she gently took her mother's hand and said softly, "Mommy, my little brother is small. Let him have it. I can go to school by myself." The woman's expression softened slightly. Seeing the girl was soaked, she looked at her with disgust and told her to go change quickly, not to dirty the floor, and especially not to get near her son. The girl walked into the house. It was a 4-bedroom apartment. Her parents had one room, her brother had one, another was a study prepared for her brother, and one was used as her father's tea room. And she walked into a tiny room that had been converted from a bathroom. The room was damp and stuffy. Besides a discarded tatami mat, there was nothing else. The window was small, the light dim, and you could constantly hear the gurgling of pipes. The scene shattered. Clara started elementary school. The elementary school at her doorstep was to be saved for her brother. She had to walk for half an hour and take a bus for over an hour every day to go to a school in the suburbs. She had to get up very early. She had to carefully check if she had all her things. If other children forgot something at home, their parents would bring it to them. If she forgot something, no one would bring it to her. Gary had frequent thunderstorms in the summer. She was always alone on the way home. Her new school uniform would be stained with ink by her brother not long after she got it. She was always dirty. Her gaze was timid and evasive. She had no friends. She was always envious of her brother, trying to please him with her obedience, desperate for her parents' attention. But no matter how well behaved she was, her parents' eyes were always on her brother. So she doted on her brother without limit, fawning over him, letting him order her around, letting him hit her and scold her. As long as she stood next to her brother, her parents' gaze, when it fell on him, would always include her. She secretly drew a family portrait in her notebook. She was holding her brother's hand, and her parents were holding their hands. After drawing it, she wrote in her notebook, "Mommy and Daddy love my little brother." After a moment's hesitation, she added, word by word, "and me too." But in reality, it was always her parents holding her brother's hand. She was like a transparent little tail following behind, eating the snacks her brother didn't want, picking up the things he threw away. No one thought this was wrong. Her parents didn't. Her brother didn't. Her grandparents who often came to see her brother didn't. Her grandparents who occasionally video called didn't. And after the nosy neighbor moved away, the other neighbors didn't. It got to the point where even Clara didn't think it was wrong. When she was in the 4th grade, her brother was finally starting the 1st grade, but he refused to go to the experimental elementary school at their doorstep, insisting on going to his sister's school. She knew it was because he wanted a compliant servant at school. This special treatment made him look good in front of his classmates. But her parents scolded her for being malicious, accusing her of convincing her brother not to use the spot because she couldn't use it herself. It was as if even fate didn't want her brother to go. On the day they were supposed to leave, the new neighbor who had just moved in next door crashed into her father's car while parking. Then while carrying a hot coffee out the door, they accidentally scalded her brother. But even with the burn, her brother insisted on going to school. Her parents couldn't win, so they coaxed him by saying they were just going to register. But in reality, they were just going to take a look around the school. This was also the first time Clara had gone home from school with her parents. Because her brother had never taken a bus before and was making a fuss about wanting to, they even had to take the bus home together. She felt a misplaced joy, as if her parents were picking her up from school. This joy reached its peak when, under the guise of leading the way, she was able to hold her mother's hand, skipping and bouncing down the street full of life. She felt like colorful bubbles were rising in her heart. She just wished all her classmates could see her. Her parents had come. They had come to pick her up. On the bus, she couldn't stop chattering, trying her best to show off her familiarity and confidence with the stops and the route. Because she gave the seat she had managed to grab to her brother, her parents even praised her a couple of times, saying she was sensible and independent. But unexpectedly, when they reached Bridgeview Station and the bus was on the bridge, the driver swerved to avoid a car that had violated traffic rules, lost control, and plunged into the river. River water poured in. People frantically grabbed for emergency hammers, pushing and shoving in a chaotic mass. Her mother screamed, cursing her viciously. "It's all your fault, you jinx! You made us take this bus. You must have wanted to kill us." In that moment, Clara wasn't afraid of dying. She was afraid of not meeting her mother's expectations. She had made a mistake, a huge mistake. Her heart was flooded with guilt and panic. Her parents, holding their brother, squeezed through a broken window with the crowd. She stood alone, desperately wanting to make up for something. Suddenly, she vaguely saw an emergency hammer in the water. She pinched her nose, held her breath, and crouched down, feeling around for it. She didn't care that she was being kicked and stepped on by the chaotic crowd. She finally found the hammer. By now, the water was up to her mouth, but she didn't care. She stood on her tiptoes and shouted with joy, "Mommy, I got the hammer! Mommy!" She happily squeezed towards her mother, holding the hammer high like a victory flag. The woman who was desperately trying to squeeze through the crowd finally saw the hammer. Her eyes lit up and she snatched it away. "Honey, quick, there's a hammer. Let's get our baby out of here." The woman turned and left. The man holding their crying brother used his tall body to shove Clara aside. They excitedly smashed another window and escaped. No one looked back, not even once, at the small girl calling for help in the water. She watched the water rise above her head, watched the backs of her parents carefully protecting her brother as they disappeared into the distance. She longed for them to turn around, to come back for her. She slowly closed her eyes. In a deep, beautiful dream, her parents and her brother had come back. They were standing happily outside the bus door, calling to her, "Come on down, get off the bus." Space seemed to tear apart. A black, viscous substance poured from the rift into Clara's mind. Black, sticky tentacles grew from her small body, reaching out in all directions. Every person who had escaped was entangled by the tentacles, dragged back, and died in a struggle of extreme terror. The next second, they all opened their eyes again, smiling, standing outside the bus, chanting, "Come on down, get off the bus." Another clap of thunder boomed. I was back near that kindergarten again. A stormy day. A 5-year-old Clara was walking in the rain with her umbrella. Even knowing that this little girl was the mental host, the terrifying being who had killed everyone on the bus, I couldn't bring myself to hate her. I even felt a sense of empathy, a pang of sadness. If my parents hadn't died in that highway collapse, if that feisty little old lady hadn't taken me in, her future could have been my future. Only, her name was Clara. My name was Chloe Jensen, the jinx who owed her parents a son. "You hate them too, right, sis?" A child's voice sounded next to me. I turned my head. A 10-year-old Clara was standing next to me, her eyes filled with pity as she looked at the smaller figure. I didn't answer. The rain was pouring down. Clara looked at me seriously. "Your psychic power is very strong, much stronger than mine. Merge with me. Our power will be enough to cover half the city. There, all people like them will die." I still didn't say anything, just continued to follow the little Clara. The 10-year-old Clara ran to keep up. "What are you hesitating for, sis? Don't they deserve to die? Don't you want them to die?" I paid her no mind and kept walking. The Clara next to me spoke with increasing hatred, her eyes flowing with a black, viscous liquid that dyed her entire eyeballs black. "Sis, don't listen to her." Another 10-year-old Clara ran out from a side alley, her expression timid, her tone anxious. The Clara next to me instantly melted into a black, viscous substance, scattering in the rain. The Clara who had run out watched nervously until the liquid had completely disappeared, then breathed a sigh of relief. Sis, it's a good thing you didn't listen to her. She's a part of my psychic power that has been corrupted. If you merge with her, you'll cease to exist. She looked around, then hunched her shoulders and whispered, Sis, come with me. I can help you contain the paranormal domain. My gaze swept over her head, then continued walking forward without a word. She anxiously followed, her voice filled with weichu and timidity. Sis, don't you believe me? I'm not lying to you. I just want to help you. As she spoke, the sky in the distance suddenly became blurry, as if covered by a thick white veil. I stopped and turned to look at the road I had just walked. A white, hazy fog was rising abnormally in the downpour, spreading from the distance. The Clara next to me grew even more anxious, tears welling up in her eyes. Sis, they're coming. If you don't listen to me, you'll be killed. As if to prove her words, another Clara suddenly ran out from an unknown corner. The Clara next to me melted away. One after another. There was a kind one, a grumpy one, a naive one. I walked on with my head down, responding to none of them, because none of them wore that pink hair clip. When I stepped into Clara's neighborhood, the last 10-year-old Clara stopped. She looked up at me, her smile innocent and harmless. Sis, I'm going to eat you very, very soon. Her words were chilling. I couldn't help but quicken my pace, my mind racing through the clues. That hair clip was so chipped, yet Clara still wore it. It must have had a very important meaning to her. But I hadn't seen its origin in any of the memory fragments. One day, the hair clip just suddenly appeared on her head. I remembered the magazine mentioning some mental hosts still retain a part of their consciousness and fight against the unknown mutation. I deduced that the memory fragments I had seen were the parts of Clara that had already been corrupted. The memory of her most cherished butterfly hair clip had been preserved. She was hiding somewhere, fighting against the unknown mutation. Where could she be?
Little Clara got home. The same story played out. She walked into that small dark room, and the scene shattered. Little Clara started elementary school. Little Clara was in the 4th grade. The fog was closing in. In the world shrouded by the white mist, living creatures, houses, everything melted away, as if being eaten. Strange creatures occasionally moved in the fog. Some had long tentacles, some were giant eyeballs, some looked like stick insects with jointed limbs. I had to find the mental host before the fog consumed everything, I thought grimly. This time, as I watched little Clara leave for the bus with her school bag, I didn't follow. Instead, I knocked on the neighbor's door. This was where the auntie who used to speak up for Clara had lived, but I didn't know when she had moved away. The new neighbor who moved in later had wrecked her family's car and scalded her brother. No one answered the door. It seemed no one was home. But I knocked persistently, calling out, Clara, open the door. I know you're in there. You risked appearing on the bus to save me. Why are you hiding from me now? After calling out a couple of times, creak, the door opened on its own. The inside was pitch black. I couldn't see anyone. I stepped inside. It was a 3-bedroom apartment, a bit smaller than Clara's house. The rooms were empty and dusty, not at all like a place where someone had just moved in. I opened the door to each room. Finally, in the corner of the master bedroom, I found Clara, sitting on the floor, hugging her knees. On her yellowed hair was a chipped pink butterfly hair clip. Her eyes were red, as if she had been crying for a long time. I sighed. It was like seeing my 6-year-old self. I gently hugged her. I know. It's not your fault. You're not the one who was wrong. She looked at me, stunned. Tears rolled down her cheeks, more and more, her small mouth puckering as she began to sob. I didn't mean to. I didn't want to kill them. This was a child born into a family that favored sons,
yet desperately longed for her parents' love. After killing her own parents in such a situation, after killing so many strangers, it was hard for her to say with hatred that they all deserved to die, hard to act as if nothing had happened. The guilt would drive her mad. I held her like that feisty old lady had held me, gently patting her back. I know. I understand. The day the bus crashed was a shadow Clara could never escape, to the point that even in her memories, she had to invent a non-existent neighbor, creating various accidents in the hopes of stopping her parents and brother from going to the school, just like I used to. My voice echoed softly in the room, my thoughts drifting back to that day seared into my memory. Let me tell you my story. When I was 6, my parents were driving back to our hometown. On the highway, they started arguing again about not having a son. As they argued, they decided to turn back home. In their anger, they left me on the side of the highway. I walked on that highway all night, from dusk to dawn, afraid of being taken by a bad person, afraid of being hit by a car around a bend. But when I found out they had died in a highway collapse that day, what I felt wasn't hatred or glee. It was guilt. For no reason. It felt like I had killed them. I punished myself by not eating or drinking, fantasizing that they actually had a son, so they wouldn't have argued and there wouldn't have been an accident. Then I met an old lady. She looked fierce. But that day, she just gently held me and told me, I know, I understand. But little one, please be gentle with yourself. You've already done well enough. I gently stroked Clara's hair, my voice soft. Little one, please be gentle with yourself. You've already done well enough. If you hadn't held on, this paranormal domain would have expanded, who knows how much. If you hadn't held on, the number of people who died during this time would have been who knows how many times higher. If you hadn't held on, I would have been killed the moment I entered the psychic world. The harm wasn't caused by you, but the hope was planted by you. You are a hero I greatly admire. Sis! Her eyes brightened, banishing the deep-seated timidity and fawning. I'm a hero, she murmured. I'm not a jinx, not a bad omen, not a servant, not a weird kid, not a manipulative child, not useless. I'm a hero? You are a hero, I said with conviction. The room suddenly shook violently, then plunged downwards. With a loud crash, the entire apartment fell from the 7th floor to the ground. It was the fog. I looked out the window. The master bedroom's bay window was now surrounded by a blanket of white. A giant stick insect-like creature slowly crawled across the glass, making a rustling sound. The fog had already spread to the neighborhood, melting away the other buildings, leaving only this apartment, which had fallen from the sky. Clara's face turned noticeably pale, a look of pain on her small face. Sis, I can't hold on much longer. When this psychic world is completely corrupted, I'll become a dark, terrifying monster. I don't want to hurt anyone. I quickly grabbed her hand, my voice gentle. I know. How can I help you? She shook her head, crying, her voice weak. I became a mental host after a complete mental breakdown. My fate is to be completely consumed. There's no saving me. Containing a paranormal domain requires withstanding its full psychic impact. It's extremely dangerous. One wrong move and you'll be consumed instead. The probability of success is too low. I never intended for you to take this path. I was going to burn all my psychic energy to send you out of the domain. Sis, too many people have died in front of me. I selfishly wanted to save just one. At least I could save one. She smiled at that. But I realized if you had a choice, you wouldn't accept that outcome, would you? You're a hero. How could I be a coward? I smiled, cupping her face, my voice firm. We've come this far. If there's even a sliver of a chance, I will stop it from hurting anyone else. She smiled, winking at me playfully, her voice clear and childlike. Then let's give it our all. With that, she gently opened her arms and hugged me. Crystalline points of light flew from her body and into my mind. The room rapidly collapsed and melted away. I was surrounded by a thick white fog, Black, viscous liquid seeped from the ground and into my brain. I felt like I was being torn into countless pieces, each with its own consciousness, trying to leave me. Despair, helplessness, and distortion flooded my senses. At the moment I was about to give up, a cluster of crystalline light appeared, enveloping me in warmth. The image within the light was simple. The neighbor auntie holding the hand of a 7 or 8-year-old Clara, leading her into a bakery and buying her a tiny cake. In a KFC, she ate a whole hamburger for the first time, blew out her own birthday candles, and received her first birthday gift, a beautiful pink butterfly hair clip. This was the memory Clara had guarded with her life, the person she had held on for so long just to protect. Hatred breeds destruction, but love gives birth to courage and strength. Even a little bit can take root and grow. This love guided me, showing me the feisty little old lady glaring at me and saying, "If I don't help get the world back in order, what if you get locked down the next time you go out?" I smiled. "Grandma, now I'm going to get the world back in order so you can go out safely from now on." A tremendous power surged from my soul. I gathered every fractured piece of myself, gradually merging them into a complete whole, leaving only the ghostly image of a bus in my mind. A cool breeze blew. I walked slowly down from the bridge, hands in my pockets. I passed under one streetlight after another, my shadow stretching and shrinking over and over. "Look, she's down! She's down!" A clamor of voices erupted. A few people jumped out of an SUV parked on the side of the road and ran towards me. In the lead was a woman with a high ponytail, wearing a thin black trench coat. She looked at me with a steady gaze and extended a hand in a black glove. "Chloe Jensen, hello. My name is Aurora Vance, Director of Operations for the World Anomaly Response Directorate." I wanted to cover my face. This was the name my grandma had given me. She had said that after 6 years of being Chloe, I had started to believe I really owed someone a son. "For the rest of your life," she declared, "you'll be Cherish, so that everyone who says your name is telling you that you are a treasure, one of a kind." But honestly, anyone who had to be called that would know. The name is just so embarrassing. I tried my best to maintain a serious expression and shook her hand. Clearly, these people had resources. They had found out my name so quickly. Aurora hesitated for a moment, her tone heavy. "Serena Lynn was one of my squad leaders. You should have her body with you, right?" I let out a slow breath. With a flick of my wrist, the mystery magazine appeared in my hand. This magazine should be hers. The bodies are currently in the paranormal domain. I can manifest the domain and release them, but it's not convenient here. Aurora took the magazine, a faint sadness on her strong features. "Yes, this is the secondary notebook from the mother-daughter notebook set she took on the bus. Whatever she wrote in this would be synced to the primary notebook. We know everything she encountered on the bus. That's how we were able to deduce the rules and use the special phone to send you hint messages when the domain and reality overlapped. So in that desperate situation, there were people outside helping me all along." I felt a surge of gratitude. At the same time, I was confused. But there were 2 living people on the bus. Why only I received the messages? A girl with pigtails behind Aurora explained, "Currently, only people with sufficiently strong psychic power can receive messages from that phone." So that was it. I solemnly expressed my gratitude to them. After a moment of hesitation, I asked, "Are there many paranormal domains in this world?" At my question, the expressions of the group grew grave. Aurora said slowly, "More and more. And some domains have a much larger area of effect, not as mild as 018. My eyes widened. "Wait, that bus was that terrifying? And you call it mild?" I heard Aurora continue. "There is currently a paranormal domain in Chicago with 120,000 people trapped inside. After professional assessment, the most suitable tool for rescue is paranormal domain 018, the death bus. Serena went in to contain 018 to save people. Unfortunately, she died inside." Her sharp, hawk-like eyes looked at me sincerely. "Now, you have contained 018. I would like to ask for your help in saving people. Do you accept?" I agreed without hesitation. When I was in a desperate situation, Serena Lynn's notes had helped me, and Aurora and her team had helped me. Now that I had the ability, how could I back down? Seeing my quick agreement, Aurora smiled with appreciation and got straight to the point. Chloe, Cherish, Jensen, the world is undergoing a mutation. The duty of our World Anomaly Response Directorate is to handle the various anomalous events caused by these mutations, to be a shield for humanity. Our work is extremely dangerous, with a high risk of sacrifice. Are you willing to join us? Huh? I was stunned. Wait, is this how you recruit people? You just come out and say, our job is extremely dangerous. You could die. Want to join? The girl with pigtails quickly started counting on her fingers. 6-figure salary, full benefits, plus a top-tier pension plan. You get a house and a car as soon as you join. You can even bring your family to live with you. 180 days of paid vacation a year. As long as you don't betray us, the organization will never lay you off. As long as the Earth exists, our organization will exist. I wiped the drool from the corner of my mouth, my voice choked with emotion. After all these years, the organization has finally come for me. A taxi pulled up abruptly. Before it had even come to a complete stop, a powerful voice shouted from inside, "You damn girl! You don't answer your phone? Playing outside so late? Don't you know that you have to come home?" Next, an old lady with curly silver hair got out of the car. She walked towards me leaning on a cane, looking frail, and then fiercely pinched my ear. But her voice was low as she whispered, "Cherish, quick, get in the car and run. I've already called the police. They probably won't dare to chase us." "Ow! Ow, ow, ow!" I yelled, quickly explaining, "No, Grandma, it's okay. They're my friends, not bad guys." Huh? The old lady froze, then let go of my ear as if nothing had happened. She turned to Aurora and her team with a kind smile. "Oh, you are my Cherish's friends? What are you all doing out so late at night?" Aurora smiled back. "Yes, Cherish's bus broke down on the way. We happened to be passing by and we're just about to give her a ride home." "Oh, is that so? Well, thank you then. Come visit sometime." The little old lady smiled, but her eyes kept darting towards me. Her expression clearly said she didn't believe a word of it. On the way back, she walked with the stride of a dragon, fast and powerful. The cane she had been leaning on was now in my hand. It was steel and weighed at least 7 or 8 pounds. "You're amazing, Grandma. That was quite an act." I gave her a thumbs up. If Aurora and her team had been bad guys, they would have been in for a world of hurt from this seemingly frail little old lady. The little old lady nudged me with her elbow. "Cherish, did I pinch you too hard?" "No, Grandma, you couldn't possibly hurt me." She adjusted with her eyes towards Aurora's group. "Something's up, right? Something you can't talk about?" I smiled. "Can't talk about it for now, because I hadn't gone through orientation yet and signed the NDA for my family." She chuckled. "All right then, Grandma won't ask for now. Little Cherish has secrets now." As soon as we got in the car, before the door was even fully closed, the driver slammed on the gas and shot forward. The jolt almost made me manifest the paranormal domain right there. I heard the little old lady yelling, leaning to the side, "Driver, you can stop flooring it. We're not in danger anymore." The driver quickly slowed down, complaining, "You old lady are too much trouble, dragging me all over the place in the middle of the night, stopping every few minutes all the way from Chicago to Gary, and that wasn't even the end of it. Then all the way back from Gary, and so much drama, all this talk about escaping like we're in a cop movie." Listening to the two of them bickering, a happy smile spread across my face without me even realizing it. This was my grandma, a woman as fierce as a storm, yet as warm as a spring breeze. I used to call her Grandma, but she wouldn't have it. She said she only ever had one daughter. If her daughter had a child, that child should call her Grandma. Once, she protected the small, young me. From now on, I would protect her and the world.